31 degrees in the Poitou-Charentes today, and I bring you not one but two e-Niros who have crossed the 500,000 kilometre mark. Just going off to change the shirt. Hello, welcome to e-Niro Diaries. It's Friday the 13th of June, and my goodness, we're having some very hot weather here in the Poitou-Charentes. Now, two Neros, is that Neri or Neros? I'm not sure. But anyway, to this week, a few days ago, there were two e-Neros on my driveway, as one of the people who watches the channel and also lives part of the time here in France came to visit. It was great to see him and his wife. Thanks very much for the cakes. Yeah, I hope you are surviving in this hot, humid weather. Anyway, so what I want to talk about today is use cases. Now, about a car, for example, how much of its time is actually in use compared to real time? So I'll give you an example. I zeroed my cumulative data button on the car on the 15th of March, and I've shown you before what that looked like to work out my average speed over the last, well, it's nearly 3 months now. And of course, the other thing you can do is say, well, when I took this snapshot a few days ago, the car had been in use for 81.05 hours, I think it was. In real time, 87 days had elapsed since I'd zeroed the meters. So if you say, well, how many hours is that? Well, it's 2,088 hours, which works out at a duty cycle of 3.88%. So what's the duty cycle then of these people who've just crossed the 500,000 kilometre mark? Well, I've worked out that they do somewhere between 80 and 90,000 kilometres a year, which is about 4.3 times what we do in our e-Niro, and their duty cycle is 16.7%. So these are not cars that are being driven all through the night. I mean, they may be at some point, and they may not be used at weekends because they're single owner drivers. One is a taxi and the other one is what we call a VTC car, Vehicle Touristique Chauffeur, which means that you have the chauffeur and you have a driver and a car for a period of time. Now, the first one I want to talk about is that guy. He's called Jean, and he was a maths teacher until 6 years ago when he took the exams to become a VTC driver. Initially, he had a Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in, and he liked driving on electric, so he decided to take the plunge in February 2019 and get himself a Kia e-Niro. So his car is actually 1 month older than mine, and he became a bit of a celebrity in December 2021 when his odometer had exceeded 200,000 kilometers without any problems. There's a magazine in France called Autoprop, and another one called avem.fr website. And last summer, he'd reached 460,000 kilometers, and he was featured again because he's still on his original motor and battery. And then, he talks about how well the car is wearing. So, I mean, obviously, we don't have all the details of how many times it's been serviced, how many times the reduction gear oil's been changed. But he says that his average consumption, and he works up in Paris, so, he's driving around the Paris region using regen braking a lot. And he says that he's averaged 13.7 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So that's comfortably north of 4 miles. And he's doing between 300 and 500 kilometers a day. And that fits with my calculation. I mean, it's not like he's driving 7 days a week or anything like that. But there we go. He says he does charge at home. He's put solar panels in to offset the cost of plugging in. Quite near to him is a 77 kilowatt. Is a rapid charger. And he said the battery is still in good health. It gets gets between 450 and 500 kilometers when he charges to 100%. So I mean, that's pretty amazing. But of course, he's not the only one, because around the same time last year, what we also found was there was a taxi company in the Creuse region of France. That's kind of to the northeast of Limoges, getting into the Massif Central, and this taxi company, they have about 12 or 15 vehicles, I think, and they're mostly petrol. Well, they were up until 5 years ago, when the owner, Bruno, decided to buy some electric vehicles. So he got 2 Kia e-Niro, or Niro. Someone put me right on that, please. Got 2 e-Niro and 2 Volkswagen ID.3s. Now, initially, his drivers were very, very skeptical about electric cars. Didn't think the batteries would last very long, didn't think they would have enough range for the work. But in fact, they've come to love them. And it's quite interesting that one particular woman called Kathy, I think her name is, and she's really taken to this white e-Niro, and since 100,000 kilometers was reached, she's the exclusive driver of this car. Anyway, what they do is a lot of hospital transfers, and we find that here in France. If you need to go to hospital, but you don't need an ambulance, they'll still provide you with a car to take you, bring you back. So again, she's doing similar kind of mileage to Jean up in Paris. So in November last year, Automobile Prop did a really interesting article about these 2 Kia e-Niros that were about to cross, or had by that time already crossed, the 500,000 kilometer mark. And I think it's really quite funny, because it became like a bit of a battle between Jean in Paris and Bruno, the owner of the taxi company. So what they say is, following an article devoted to Jean, whose electric e-Niro was for VTC use, was approaching 500,000 kilometers, Bruno, at the head of the taxi company in Creuse, challenged him to be the first to reach this stage. Both odometers have now crossed the threshold. Who was first? In June 2024, Jean had reached 458,000, nearly 459,000 kilometers. And then at the beginning of last summer, it was imagined that this road professional would reach his goal in September 2024, based on his sort of average daily mileage. But and he said, I didn't realize it right away. I was on a national road in the Paris region with a customer in the car. I was in the euphoria, very happy. So he was transporting medal-winning swimmer Frédéric Bosquet, and people do ask me questions about the car, and he said it's been just incredibly reliable. He said, I feel like I'm an ambassador for this model. So now many people who were afraid of electrics see that it works, because charging stations are growing. That was Jean. He did it on that day. And then Bruno had to, down in the Creuse, had to congratulate him. He said he drove very well. It just so happened that on the very next day, Tuesday, October the 1st, Automobile Prop received a second photo with the odometer displaying, again, 500,000 kilometers. And one of Bruno's employees, Kathy, had been driving the car, say, almost exclusively in the last 4 years. And Bruno says, we could have forced the game by running several drivers on this Niro, and we would then have beaten John to 500,000 kilometers. But Kathy owns this car and wanted to do it. She's happy to be able to say that she's the first taxi to cross 500,000 kilometers in France with that car. She says the year this car arrived, we were all a little on it to familiarise ourselves with the electric. But on the last 400,000 kilometres, it was only me who drove it. I love it, and I even consider it my car, even though it belongs to the company. Okay, so the article goes on to say, however, at the beginning, the professional taxi driver was not convinced. I was reluctant about electric because we drive a lot. Finally, I was able to realise that the autonomy of the e-Niro is sufficient. At Bruno, out of 15 vehicles, in addition to the four Kia e-Niro, there is also 2 Volkswagen ID3s. Electric cars have mainly been adopted by the women of the company. She remembers the mocking welcome of a colleague during her first trip. I was going to the University Hospital of Limoges. I was asked like this, "So, are you happy with your battery?" Today, this guy also runs with a battery in Creuse. Taxi Bess were the first to have electric vehicles. So what they sum up with is that at 500,000 kilometres, are the 2 Kia e-Niro still in a position to provide the service with the original battery? Yes, for Jean, the VTC driver in Paris. He said, I still use it every day. I do plan to replace it with a Kia EV9. Okay, he's often probably wants to take a lot more people around then. Kathy says it's a model that ages very well. The appearance is good inside and out. It's great to drive, comfortable, and the right height for customers in medical transport. She's had 0 defects, but she doesn't think the lighting is very good with it for nighttime. She says that she's managed between 13 and 15. She says she gets 15.3 kilowatt hours, but she's more out on the fast roads. She says she gets between 400 and 410 real autonomy. So this is 500,000 kilometers, and the car is still showing that at 100%. Not as much as the guy in Paris is showing, but you know, he's done different kind of driving, I guess. So what do they say is going to be the future for these cars? Well, at Taxi Bess in the Creuse, they say they'll bring it at least to 750,000 kilometers if it doesn't die before then. So what's 750? So 500,000 kilometers is about 300,000 miles, I think. So will it reach 750,000, which is 465,000 miles? But Bruno, the boss, says we will extend it by another 30 months to see how it goes. Maybe it will even reach 900,000. What Bruno says, his ideal is that for the car to do twice as much as a thermal car, as it translates, the internal combustion engine is a thermal car. So we see how far it goes. I hope even 1,000,000 kilometers. He says, I want to show that if electric cars are more expensive to buy, they are much less expensive to operate. Compared to the Volkswagen ID3s, he's already noticed that rolling gears are a little more fragile. Now that's interesting. He intends to continue with Kia for his next electric taxis. It's a brand that does not despise the customer. That was a translation. That builds good cars and ensures good service. I put it at the level of the Japanese for this. And he's been talking to Jean up in Paris, and he said, I'd like to buy his e-Niro from him to see how far this car will go. But it's not for sale. So I guess it's a bit of a celebrity car. Anyway, it said that if the 2 men were able to get along, does the Creuse taxi measure the risk it would take to cover Jean's car? Bruno, the boss of the taxi company, says, for the long time I've had the idea that when my electric cars can no longer provide the service in the car, but if the lithium modules are still usable, I would like to store the production of the solar panels that are on the roof of his company business.
So there you go. Will he be able to do that? Who knows? Anyway, so that's two very high mileage, extreme use case e-Niros in France that have reached the 500,000 mark, still in use, because say that was last November, that news on Autoprop. So I hope you found that interesting. Until the next time.